Hello, everybody. Father Jim Barron here. Thanks for joining us for this Fireside chat. And with me is another very, very special guest, Bishop Michael Sheridan, Bishop Emeritus of Colorado Springs. Bishop, welcome.
Thank you, Father Jim. Happy to be here.
Very glad to have you here. It's been a number of weeks in the making, but I'm glad we're finally able to do this before it gets chilly out. So
yeah, very good.
Well, you know, Bishop had been at the helm for our diocese for about 20 years.
Almost.
And just has seen a lot, has done a lot, has great wisdom and great experience. And so we're going to tap into a little bit of that today. I've got some questions, some from the parishioners to ask him, but I figured we'd start off with a kind of a softball. So you're retired now.
I am.
What are you doing in your retirement?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to still figure out exactly what retirement is, but I think I'm falling into it pretty easily. It's turning out to be what I thought it would be, a nice combination of opportunities to continue to do pastoral work. In fact, I've been here a few times for Mass, and so that's always good. And I get into the office a couple hours a week, say hi to people, catch up with things there. Otherwise, I am able now to devote a great deal of time to reading, to prayer, and yes, to a little relaxation.
Good.
Which I still feel guilty about. I haven't gotten over that yet. All these years, if I wasn't doing anything for close to an hour, I'd start to get nervous. But I'm catching up on that a little bit.
Okay.
So no, it's going well, and I'm still trying to get a little regimen in my life about it.
Sure. Oh, good. Mm-hmm. I know I think talking to some retirees, they build it up in their minds for so long if it's going to be this magical utopia once they finally get there. And then once they're there, similar thing like, well, I feel like I should be working or doing something else.
Yeah.
No, it's a well-deserved retirement. I hope you do enjoy it. So.
Well, so far I am.
Getting any grilling in?
Oh, cooking.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the only way I eat, is if I could throw a piece of meat on a barbecue grill. So, yeah, no, I'm still doing that.
Bishop grills an excellent steak. So one of the questions from our parishioners is, having heard you preach and teach, they wanted to know, are you going to be doing any more teaching? You know, you spent a lot of your priesthood doing just that, and I think that's really one of your great gifts. And any consideration of teaching a class somewhere in the diocese or even outside the diocese?
Well, it's already happened. That annual catechetical institute that our school office runs, I take part in that. The president of St. Mary's High School has already asked me if I would come and do something at St. Mary's. We haven't figured what that out. Nothing full time, but so yeah, I think there'll be opportunities for that. You know, I don't think I'll be at it full time anymore, but sure.
Well, it's been great having the bishop help at Masses at Holy Apostles and hear confessions before Mass. I've kind of been curious, has somebody gone into the confessional and been surprised to see you there?
You know, usually that happens, but if they didn't show it. There's one lady, she came to confession and then she left, and there was a little time, nobody was there. And about 2 minutes later, she walked back in and she goes, "You're Bishop Sheridan, aren't you?" So maybe she thought I was you. I don't know. But no, it was great.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's been a blessing to have you and the other priests help out. All right. So, having been at the helm here for almost 20 years, Catholic education was a big priority in your time and your service to the diocese. And you went to Catholic school growing up. What was your experience of Catholic education, and are there any things that kind of stand out as particularly impactful in your life?
My own education, you mean?
Yeah, yep.
Well, I guess we're back in those halcyon 1950s when everything seemed to be so wonderful. Didn't have much to compare it to. I mean, I lived in a very Catholic area. I don't think I met a Protestant until I was in 8th grade.
Wow.
So it was, it was pretty much a Catholic ghetto, and that's what I assumed everything was. But as I think about that, I think the most, other than my seminary formation, which of course it was a great highlight, I think one of the most important parts of my own education was when I was a freshman in college. I was at Rockhurst College, Jesuit College in Kansas City. And that's where the sense of my vocation really came to life. And there was a Jesuit on the faculty that I got to know, and I went to him and I talked, and he was very, very helpful in terms of kind of nurturing that vocation. I think he wanted me to be a Jesuit, but I had other ideas. I loved those Jesuits who taught me, but I didn't want to spend my life in a classroom. So anyway, he was such an important influence, I think, on my entering the seminary, and told me, he said, I want to be there when you're ordained, and I will pray for you. I think I was about 2 or 3 years in the seminary, and he very prematurely died of a heart attack. No. But I was confident that he was still praying for me. But that was a highlight in my education, was that. But otherwise, that year at Rockhurst. But otherwise, I think it was, for those days, it was pretty normal. I loved it. I loved the religious women who taught me in elementary school, the Jesuits who taught me in high school and college. It was all a great experience.
Did you ever have any nuns bring out boxing gloves to resolve a conflict between you and any of your classmates?
I was very good in school. I was very
Doubtless.
Good. No, I think those stories about nuns and their sticks, I never saw much of that at all. I mean, it is amazing how they could strike the fear of God into you.
Sure.
And sometimes this little nun with 50 or 60 kids, and all she have to do is look at you, and you back up. But they were great, and they were so helpful to me too as I went to grade school. And the Jesuits that taught me in high school, also a great group of guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Your great work in building up Catholic education in our own diocese, I think if it hasn't been as appreciated up till now as it ought to have been, I know so many families that have been particularly grateful for our Catholic schools, with all of the things being taught in public schools, all of the restrictions, and just kind of the chaos in the world around us. They really have found them to be a great refuge for their children, finding teachers, priests, principals who want to help them raise their children in the faith, not sort of replace the parents in raising their children according to their own agendas. So it's a great gift. So please consider sending your kids to Catholic schools.
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. Well, speaking of kind of cultural turmoil, you spent pretty much all of your priesthood after the Second Vatican Council, and you've seen a lot of the confusion and turmoil in the life of the church that happened after that time. Well, do you think the crises in the church today have a similar intensity, a similar feel to that time? And I guess a second question would be, do you think what we're going through today in the church is related to things that might have been happening then? Does that make sense? Fair question.
It does. It's just not an easy question.
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, no, let me think about that. As I recall, in the days immediately following the council, or the years immediately following the council, my recollection is that almost all of the difficulties that seemed to be going on in the infighting, the divisions and all that, were over changes in the liturgy. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. And the reforms of the council, there were some who I think understood them and didn't like them, but I think by and large, a lot of that problem came because there was such misinformation about the council out there, and so people began to think, this is what the council taught. Things were done. You remember the old phrase, the hijacking, mm-hmm. the hijacking of the council, and I think that was the cause of it. But and of course, the other thing that characterized those days was great departures of priests from the active ministry, religious women even more so, and that's for me what characterizes those days. Now, jump forward a little bit now. I think it's very much about the culture now in which we live in. remember we had the whole 60s and 70s to go through, and how much that changed us as Americans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we see it now, the divisions, the cultural, the political divisions that characterize us. And yeah, they also are reflected sometimes in religious differences and dissent. But in many ways, I think if you will, the battles that we're fighting today are more serious than the ones right after the council. I think Popes John Paul II and Benedict helped settle a lot of that down. But these cultural divisions, I don't know what other word to use. I think they're going to be with us a while, and it's going to be a real challenge for the church.
Yeah. I heard one scholar suggest, or he uses the phrase, the cut flower syndrome, that the problems we're facing now, the kind of the crumbling of things that started long ago, but now we're just starting to see it, like when you take flowers and cut them off from where they're growing and then put them in a vase with water. Yeah, they'll look pretty for a while, but then eventually they start to wither. And I think that lack of stability in people's lives really is manifesting it more and more. And when you're in that kind of a crisis, you just start to try to grab for something solid. And I think in the church, especially as a pastor, you've seen this even more intensely than I have. It seems like folks will try to grasp towards the most confident voice, even if that voice is wrong. Like they sound like they know what they're talking about, and they're talking about it with great conviction, and so they therefore must be right.
Right. And that's why I think we need voices that can really speak the truth. We need Catholic laity because, I think we all know that over these last decades, there hasn't been the greatest catechesis of our lay faithful, and so they need to be encouraged to not to be theologians, but to know their faith, to know it, and this is what I tell a lot, whether it's in homilies or everything. What it's all about, for me, is seriously getting to know Jesus Christ personally, and then to appreciate the fact that Christ without his church is unthinkable, because there's some very, very shallow understanding of what the church is. Yeah. Kind of like a club with a little religious veneer on it. And it's not. It's the body of Christ. We are members of that. It's where our salvation is, and we've got to take that seriously, warts and all, because the church is made up of sinful human beings, and it's never going to be perfect as much as we'd like it to be.
Right.
Well, not till heaven anyway.
I guess like any family, you can't choose your family members. Some of them might be nut jobs, but they're still your family.
Right.
And in that, you're sort of bound to learn how to live together in that.
Right.
I think there are, and in large part thanks to your efforts and really your legacy of helping to establish some great lay formation opportunities in our diocese. There are a lot of Catholics who are deeply invested in the life of the church, and this is a wonderful phenomenon I think we're starting to see the fruits of. And at the same time, when we're deeply invested into something, we form strong opinions, and there can be disagreements. There is a lot of disagreement in the church, outside of the church, what is best, what are the best decisions, the right decisions, on what it means to be faithful to Jesus Christ. Do you have any recommendations for how to move forward in this conversation? It's a hard conversation, and I think people are trying to, some have given up, and they've just decided that their way is the right way, and they're not going to engage anymore. Any encouragement in that regard?
Well, again, the Second Vatican Council encouraged the lay faithful. Now, respectfully, after prayer and as much study as possible, to be unafraid to speak to the pastors of the church, to the priests, to the bishops. In other words, they have ideas. Sometimes they're not good, and sometimes they are good. But I think I want to restore, and I don't think it's broken that much, but I want to have a closer relationship of the lay faithful to their pastors, to the bishop, and understand that all of us together are the church. We have different roles in the church. And I think we've come a long way in that, don't you? In our parish life and diocesan life too. But there's always going to be some, I guess, disagreements. There's always going to be some hurt feelings. Again, that's the humanity of the church. But that's not the fullness and the depth of what the church is. And I think we could always get past that if we do it in the right way. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but
well, I like your emphasis on. I've heard it put as co-responsibility.
yes,
Pope Benedict spoke about that, and I know that's been part of our pastoral paradigm or prerogative here at the Holy Apostles, is really understanding what that looks like. And it doesn't mean that we're all meant to be doing the same thing. There's a mutual orientation of the pastors of the church have a responsibility for the sanctification and teaching and upbuilding the faithful. Mm-hmm. They're building up of the church by bringing the gospel out and building up the church, especially by sanctifying the temporal order. Mm-hmm. And that mutual co-responsibility, I think, clarifies, by clarifying the role, like whose job is what. And when there's a clarity about mission, there seems to be a lot less infighting and kind of bickering about, well, what you're doing wrong. They're like, well, I know it's hard enough to do what I'm supposed to be doing. I can't imagine how hard it is to do what you're supposed to be doing. Right. And sort of we turn to a mutual supporting in that. I want you to do what you do well, and thank you for supporting me in doing what I do well.
And we need to recapture that, because that's exactly what the council taught. And yet we had those years too, when the priests were running out of the sanctuary to do anything and everything out there, and lay people were jumping over the communion rail to get us. And I mean, that's a caricature of it, I know, but this sort of laicizing of the clergy and the clericalizing of the that didn't serve us very well. Yeah. Yes, we each have our jobs to do, our work to do, our mission, and when that can be done in harmony with one another, great things happen. Yeah.
It's like when spouses live that complementarity. Mm-hmm. It's something that is really irreplaceable, and how beautiful and how effective it is. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, having been in leadership, you receive a lot of criticism and scrutiny. Every decision you made was very public, and I'm sure you've got lots of letters. What do you think is something that that we can do as the diocese to help support our new bishop, Bishop Golka?
For me, I could tell you what was encouraging for me. Well, first of all, to know, because they would tell me, people would tell me, I'm praying for you. Well, obviously that's absolutely essential. But when someone would take the time to say, yes, I know what you're doing. I read this. I heard what you said. It was helpful. Mm-hmm. But believe it or not, even when they'd say, I don't know, I don't think I got that, and it was the beginning of a conversation with somebody. I loved that, when they would they weren't attacking, but sure. It was, so I think to be unafraid to communicate with the bishop, to encourage him, and to be unafraid, as I said earlier, to bring your well thought out ideas and encouragements for the church to him. From what I could tell, he listens well.
Yeah. I think for anybody in leadership, knowing that somebody's coming to you not as an opponent, but rather as a collaborator, exactly. And even if there's some working out of the ideas along the way, that you really ultimately want the same thing, the health and life of the church. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. I grew up under your leadership. I joined the seminary shortly after you took over, and I just want to express my own personal gratitude for the tremendous support from Bishop Sheridan, from you during my time as a seminarian and my time as a priest. And these are not easy days. St. Paul said, "He who aspires to the office of bishop aspires to a noble task," but it's also a brutal task. Especially now, and thank you for answering that vocation and serving the church in that way, and especially how it's really been a great gift to me personally. So thank you so much, Bishop.
And right back at you with the thanks. You're a great priest and a wonderful pastor, and very proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Well, we're going to end with some lightning round questions. Well, almost end, because I want to leave the last word to Bishop Sheridan. But we got some lightning round questions, and these are super serious. So, first one, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
You mean like cartoon character,
Yeah,
like that kind of thing? Oh my goodness. You know, when I was a kid, I always thought it would be great to be able to fly like Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think a top one.
It's better than getting on planes, I'll tell you that.
Oh, no kidding. No TSA for Superman. Nice. Okay, if you could celebrate Mass anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I have celebrated Mass at a number of places in the world, and I still think, to this day, the most kind of inspiring for me have been, well, first in general, many of the churches of Rome, where I lived and studied for a few years, but to go now as a bishop especially, and I have in the past a number of times, to go and celebrate Mass at the tomb of St. Peter, is still a very spiritually thrilling experience. So,
Fantastic.
But I could say the same thing in some days about parishes where I've been the pastor, and
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, there are things that have different kind of significance than other places. So, okay, well, I understand that. All right, last question. This is probably a little more personal. Now that you're retired, and you may have had this all along, what is your number one guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure.
Nothing that has to be confessed in the confessional.
No, I know what you're talking about. Ice cream.
Is there a flavor that you like?
Well, there's hardly any that I don't, but I guess I guess a good old chocolate ice cream is what I enjoy the best. But I feel guilty about it because at my age I don't need to be eating too much ice cream. But yeah, that comes to mind.
All right, good to know. Good to know. Well, I will make sure that's on the menu next time we have dinner. Well, before I close it up, Bishop, anything you want to say or any last words or thoughts to leave us with?
Well, since in many ways it was kind of a little bit of recollection of my years here, I would just want to say to you and to those who are watching this video, it really has been a wonderful almost 20 years. I'm not leaving, as far as I know, and so I look forward to whatever time God has given me to continue to be part of the diocese, and so would ask for the ongoing prayers of so many that I know have been praying for me for many, many years. So God bless you all, and thank you for the many kindnesses that you've shown me.
And we will continue those in our prayers, Bishop. Thank you so much for being on this Fireside Chat. Thank you for joining in. Please feel free to share widely and subscribe to our YouTube channel. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining.